Hello and welcome back to Gilly Sports. Today we're going to be predicting the Premier League results. As you can see, I'm using my phone uh, to predict the results using the Premier League's apps result predictor thingy. I don't know what to call it, but it's quite useful because it means I don't have to write it down and stuff, and I can actually read my handwriting next week. Um, and we'll get started with the very first game of the Premier League. It's Arsenal Coventry, Premier League champions and Champions League runners up last year, versus Coventry City, who just came up from the Championship. First time in the Premier League since 2002, I think. So 24 years later, and 24 years on since that dramatic relegation to former player Dion Dublin back in 2002, Coventry makes their ultimate return again in probably the hardest game they could have possibly had, I'd say, with Arsenal. And it's going to be a very, very interesting game. It's at the Emirates. Arsenal are known for playing quite well at the Emirates. So I think on that basis, Arsenal probably will win this. I don't think it'll be that tight of a game. I think it'll be a fairly comfortable win. I'm going to go with 2-0 Arsenal. I think it's just not going to be too much for Coventry. I don't think they'll do terribly this year, as you saw in my predictions earlier a couple of weeks ago. I said that I think I said Coventry will finish 10th, which I think is pretty fair because I think they're a fairly good side. They've got the squads and the signings they've been making, certainly in the last few days, with a 1 year and they signed someone today I can't remember the name of. Um, I do think Coventry can win it, and yeah, I'm going to go with. Sorry, I do think Coventry can do well this year, rather, but I do think Arsenal will beat them 2-0. Hull Man United. Now, this is a game that could be fairly more interesting. Man United are known for not playing particularly well on opening day. We all know that. I don't think we need to remind Man United of how badly they've done in recent years, which includes a 4-0 defeat to Brentford a couple of years ago. But as I say, I don't think Manchester United fans will be wanting reminders of that. Um, Hull have made some decent signs and probably could do fairly surprisingly good this year. Whether or not Hull will get a result out of their first game against Man United, it's interesting. Possibly, it's possible, but I'm going to say, do you know what? I'm going to say a 1-1 draw. It'd be funny to watch Man United draw. I think Man United do look okay, but they another certain team. They haven't signed many players this summer. I do think they'll do. Sorry, I do think they'll do well this year, but I do think they need to make a couple more signs before they can start looking at these games and thinking, "Oh, we're going to smash them." So I think I'm going to go with Hull 1, Man United 1. I know it's a result I'm going to get crap about. People are like, oh, what do you mean that's for? Well, because I think Hull are the team going to be a team that's hard to beat this year. So I'm going with Hull 1, Man United 1. Everton Crystal Palace. Moyes' Everton. You saw at the end of last year. They're not that fun of a team to watch. Palace, a fairly boring team. A new manager. Uh, have got a fairly similar squad, but I think with the new manager, it's going to take him a little bit of time to settle into the league under him. And let's be honest, that game's got 0-0 written all over it, hadn't it? So we're going to go with 0-0 with that one, and let's just move on from it as quickly as possible because I don't want to talk about that too much. It's just going to be an absolute boring of a game. Pickford will be Pickford obviously played very well at the World Cup, and I think he'll kick a clean sheet for him and for Dean Henderson, but I just don't think the forwards are good enough to get any goals. And a ball draw at the Hill Dickinson to start off both their campaigns. Ipswich Sunderland. Now, this is where it gets interesting because they're two sides that could be either very, very good or very, very bad this year. Sunderland got into Europe last year, so we'll have a lot of focus on that. Um, Ipswich, on the other hand, just come up from the Premier from the Championship. A new manager in Gary O'Neill, but a fairly experienced manager in the Premier League. unlike Pierre Saga, he's someone that's managed two teams in the Premier League and done fairly decently well with both of them. I think he's a great choice, certainly for Ipswich. And obviously, I've got Sunderland were fantastic last year. There's no denial about that. Completely shocked everyone. Two wins in their derbies against Newcastle, a last-minute winner and an own goal, winning it for them in both those matches. But it's hard to predict on what will happen. As I say, this is the hardest game to predict, I think, for this week. But obviously, there's got to be a result somewhere. I don't think it's going to be 0-0. I think that'll be a lot. That'll be hard. Do you know what? I'm going to go with Ipswich to beat Sunderland 2-1 in late, very late on as well. Goal scorers wise, Brian Brobby to score for Sunderland. Ipswich, you could probably say someone like I don't know who played up front for Ipswich. I'm not. Honestly, I've forgotten because everyone that was playing up front for Ipswich had all left when they were relegated last time. Players like Liam Delap and Amari Hutchinson. So I honestly don't know who plays for Ipswich. I'll have to look that up and get up to date with that. But yeah, Ipswich 2, Sunderland 1 as the fourth game in the Premier League. I'm pretty sure these are 3 o'clock Saturday games, by the way. So there we go, prime time, middle of everyone will be watching at least one of these games. That's the game to watch. Is going to be Ipswich, Hull, Sunderland. If you're looking for a game to watch at 3 o'clock this Saturday, Forest Leeds are our fifth game, and I have a third game at 3 o'clock on Saturday. And to be honest, that is just the most 3 o'clock Saturday game you could think of. Two teams, both in a tight relegation battle last year with Tottenham and West Ham. I'd rather not talk about us being in a relegation battle. Forest Leeds it might be interesting. It might be an interesting match to watch, but ultimately, looking at both the squads, Forest with yet another manager going into the season, but Oliver Glasner proved himself at Palace rather that he's a great manager with a lot of good tactics and easily could be one of the very best managers in the Premier League again and could get Forest high this year. Whether or not he actually will, though, is an interesting debate. Forest Leeds, it's a game that's hard to predict, but I'm going to go with. I think simply because of Glasner's experience and the way he's played recent years, I think it probably will be a win for Forest. We're going to go with. We'll go with a 3-1 win for Forest. Yeah, Forest 3, Leeds United 1. Let's move on to our 5:30 game on Saturday. It is Brentford versus Spurs. Now, we've obviously made a lot of signings in John Paul Van Hecker, Marcus Senesi, loads of great signings this year. But I do think probably it's going to be Brentford are a team we normally struggle against. So, from a Spurs fan's perspective, we do want revenge in this match. And personally, in the most non-biased way possible, I think this is the best time for us to go and get it. We're going to go with Spurs 2, Brentford 0. A very good win for us. A win we'll 100% be proud of. And a massive win to kick off the season. And put a lot of positivity into the hearts of people like myself, big Spurs fans. Yeah, Brentford 0, Spurs 2 as our first game of the season. The next game is going to be Brighton Aston Villa. Villa and Brighton, two very teams that could very easily, both in Europe this year. But I do think because of that, they could both struggle a little bit this year and not have as good seasons as they have been in recent years. And to be honest, playing themselves, there's probably going to be a lot of it probably will have the big players just to get them out in the Premier League, but if this had been in a few months, I'm telling you now, it would have been both their second teams. Um, but ultimately, as I say, there could only be one winner in any game, and I think Villa probably will just no. Actually, just no. Obviously, there can only be there's got to be a result somewhere, and I do think Brighton will just about beat Villa. I think Villa weren't very good going in the Premier League, going into the last few games of the season with obviously the Europa League run, which they went on to win last year. But yeah, as a result of that, Brighton to beat Villa, and we're going to go. That's going to be a 1-0 win. That's going to be a 1-0 win for Brighton. A fairly boring affair, I think. There, I didn't mean to rhyme there. I just did. City Bournemouth. There we go. City starting the post Guardiola era starts against Bournemouth. Also starting their post Iraola era. Two of the club's greatest ever managers, who both departed last year, and it's City Bournemouth, Maresca and Rosa. Two very good managers. Maresca obviously got a lot more experience in the Premier League than Rosa does. But I let's be honest. Any time of the year, there's been a couple times where Bournemouth have beaten City before recently, but ultimately, it's one of those games you can look at and just know City are going to win. You have to be an idiot to not say City are going to win this. And I'm going to go with, it's interesting, but I'm going to go with Man City. We'll go with a 3-1 win for Man City, and a big win for Man City as well, as they kick off their campaign and the new Enzo Maresca era. Now, probably the biggest game of this match week is going to be Newcastle Liverpool. Unsurprisingly, two absolutely massive teams. The Isaac Derby, you could probably call it. Nearly the Anthony Gordon Derby a couple of years ago, but he just about managed to stay. He's now on to Barcelona. Newcastle 100% are going to get absolutely destroyed this year. Liverpool, on the other hand, look fantastic. I feel bad for Newcastle because they've got such great fans, haven't they? They're just the best fans in the world, Newcastle fans. I couldn't praise them enough. I've watched Spurs play Newcastle so many times now, and every single time you always see at least one fat Geordie with his top off and Hawaii the Toon tattooed in his chest. But I think that fat Geordie is sadly going to be very sad in this game. It's at St James Park, so an advantage for Newcastle. But because Liverpool obviously up north, they don't have to drive as far, and normally that's where Newcastle get most of their wins is from teams having to drive really far up north and then getting absolutely battered. Yeah, that's definitely the reason why we lost 6-1 to them a couple of years ago. We're going to go with Liverpool 4, Newcastle 0. It's that game all over, isn't it? Liverpool look amazing. Newcastle look awful at the moment. Don't get me wrong. I do think some of their signs have been great. I do feel bad for Newcastle. Newcastle were a team I genuinely don't like predicting against them. I do like Newcastle a lot, but Liverpool, they just will absolutely batter them, won't they? I mean, the Newcastle have lost literally everybody. An unexperienced manager, a terrible appointment, in my opinion. Liverpool, obviously, under the Iraola era, kicks off with a 4-0 win over Newcastle. Yeah. And the final game of this game week is going to be Fulham-Chelsea. West London derby. Two of the closest clubs in the Premier League, distance-wise. But let's be honest, with such a great manager coming in for Chelsea, I mean Arbeloa, don't get me wrong, is obviously a former Premier League player and someone who I think will do quite well for Fulham this year. But I think Xabi Alonso just has that edge at him. I'm going to go with 2-0 Chelsea over Fulham. So that is it for my predictions this week for the Premier League. My opening predictions, I'll come back to review these next week. So just a reminder of them: Arsenal 2-0 Coventry, Hull 1, Man United 1, Everton 0-0, Crystal Palace, Ipswich 2, Sunderland 1, Nottingham Forest 3, Leeds 1, Brentford 0, Spurs 2, Brighton 1, Aston Villa 0, Manchester City 3, Bournemouth 1, Newcastle 0, Liverpool 4, Fulham 0, Chelsea 2. To kick off this year's Premier League. Yeah, thank you for watching, guys. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm going to be filming my EFL predictions, which will come out on Friday. There's no Friday EFL game this week, I don't think. So not as much pressure for time. I've also got to sort out what games they're going to predict for that one. And I will see you lots tomorrow then. Cheerio.